Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we're diving into something fascinating. What it was actually like to be a teenager in ancient Athens, the cradle of democracy, philosophy, and some surprisingly chaotic street life. Before we jump in, if you enjoy this kind of historical deep dive, go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe. And drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. I love seeing our global community come together. Your story begins in Athens during its golden age, around the 5th century BCE. This is a city-state bursting with energy, intellectual brilliance, and enough public arguments to make modern Twitter look peaceful. You're not just living in any city. You're living in the birthplace of Western civilization, where Socrates walks the streets asking uncomfortable questions, and playwrights are crafting tragedies that will echo through millennia. But here's the thing about being young in Athens. Childhood ends abruptly. One day you're playing with clay figurines in the courtyard, and seemingly overnight, society decides you're ready for adult responsibilities. For boys, this transition comes around age 14 or 15. For girls, it arrives even earlier, sometimes as young as 12 or 13. Let's start with the boys. If you're the son of an Athenian citizen, your teenage years revolve around one central goal: becoming a proper citizen capable of participating in democracy and defending the polis in battle. Your education intensifies dramatically. You spend mornings with the grammatistes, the teacher of letters, learning to read and write Greek. And we're not talking about simple sentences. You're memorizing long passages from Homer's epics, studying the poetry of Hesiod, and wrestling with the complex ideas of early philosophers. But education in Athens isn't just intellectual. Physical training is equally important. You head to the palaestra, the wrestling school, where you train naked alongside other boys. Wrestling, running, javelin throwing, discus. These aren't just sports, they're preparation for military service. The Athenians believe a citizen must cultivate both mind and body, creating what they call the kalos kagathos, the beautiful and good person. Music education also plays a crucial role. You learn to play the lyre, memorize songs, and study rhythm and harmony. Music isn't entertainment in Athens. It's considered essential for developing a balanced soul and understanding mathematical principles. Your music teacher, the kitharistes, drills you relentlessly until your fingers ache, and you can recite entire compositions from memory. If your family can afford it, you might also study with a sophist, one of those traveling teachers who claim they can teach you anything for the right price. They teach rhetoric, the art of persuasive speaking, which is absolutely essential in a democracy where your ability to argue in the assembly or defend yourself in court can determine your entire future. Now, if you're a girl in Athens, your experience is radically different. Athenian society keeps you largely confined to the home, the oikos. Your education focuses on domestic skills: weaving, spinning, managing household slaves, preparing food, and learning the religious rituals you'll need to perform as a wife and mother. You're not taught to read or write, at least not formally. The Athenians believe women's minds are too delicate for serious intellectual work, which is absurd, but that's the reality you're navigating. Your days are spent in the women's quarters, the gynaikon, separated from the men's areas of the house. You rarely leave home except for religious festivals, and when you do venture out, you're heavily chaperoned. Your mother and the household's female slaves teach you everything you need to know: how to run a household efficiently, how to manage servants, how to conduct yourself modestly in the rare moments you're seen in public. And marriage looms over everything. By your early teens, your father is already negotiating your betrothal. You have no say in who you'll marry. That's decided between your father and your future husband, based on property considerations, family alliances, and social status. Love isn't part of the equation. You're expected to bring a dowry, move into your husband's home, and begin producing legitimate heirs as quickly as possible. Let's talk about daily life in Athens, because this city is an assault on the senses. You wake before dawn to the sound of roosters, vendors already shouting in the streets, in the general chaos of urban life. Athens is crowded, noisy, and smells like a combination of olive oil, baking bread, incense, human sweat, and open sewers. There's no indoor plumbing,
Chamber pots are emptied into the streets, and you learn quickly to watch where you step. The streets themselves are narrow, winding, and unpredictable.
You navigate around donkeys carrying goods, slaves rushing on errands for their masters, merchants setting up stalls, and philosophers holding impromptu debates on street corners. The Agora, the central marketplace, is the beating heart of Athenian life. It's where you buy food, hear the latest news, watch political debates, and encounter everyone from farmers to foreign traders. If you're a teenage boy, you spend significant time in the Agora, learning by observation. You watch your father conduct business, listen to political speeches, and begin understanding how democracy actually functions. You see citizens voting on important matters, arguing passionately about policy, and sometimes getting into physical altercations when debates get too heated. Food is simple but flavorful. Breakfast might be bread dipped in wine. Yes, Athenians drink diluted wine even in the morning because the water supply is unreliable. Lunch is light, maybe some cheese, olives, and figs. The main meal comes in the evening: barley porridge, fish if you're lucky, vegetables, more bread, and always wine, though heavily watered down. Wealthy families eat meat occasionally, usually after a religious sacrifice, but it's not a daily occurrence. Religious festivals punctuate the year, and these are the highlights of teenage life in Athens. The Panathenaia, celebrating the goddess Athena, is massive. Athletic competitions, musical performances, religious processions, and a general atmosphere of celebration. The City Dionysia brings theatrical performances with tragedies and comedies that address serious moral and political questions while still managing to be wildly entertaining. For teenage boys, the symposium represents a fascinating and somewhat controversial aspect of Athenian culture. These are drinking parties where men recline on couches, consume wine, discuss philosophy and politics, listen to music, and engage in various forms of entertainment. As you approach adulthood, you might be invited to observe, though full participation waits until you're officially recognized as a citizen. The path to full citizenship for boys culminates around age 18, with enrollment in the Ephebia, a 2-year military training program. You're given a spear and shield, you swear an oath to defend Athens, and you spend the next 2 years training in warfare, patrolling the borders, and learning what it means to be a hoplite, a heavily armed foot soldier. This is when you truly transition from youth to citizen. For girls, the transition is marriage. Usually arranged around age 14 or 15, marriage means leaving your childhood home and moving to your husband's household, where you'll live under his authority. Your primary role is producing legitimate male heirs to continue the family line and managing the domestic sphere while your husband handles public life. Athletics play a huge role in teenage boys' lives. You compete in running races, wrestling matches, and other contests, often training at gymnasia, which are part athletic facility, part social club, part philosophical discussion center. The Olympics and other Panhellenic Games are the ultimate goal for ambitious young athletes, though only a select few will ever compete at that level. Friendships formed during these teenage years are intense and lifelong. The bonds created through shared education, athletic training, and military service become the foundation of Athenian political and social networks. Your companions today might be your fellow citizens voting in the assembly tomorrow, or your brothers in arms when Athens inevitably goes to war. Because war is always present. Athens is frequently in conflict, with Sparta, with Persia, with rival city-states. Growing up in classical Athens means growing up with the knowledge that you'll likely fight someday. Military service isn't optional. It's the price of citizenship, the expectation that comes with having a voice in democracy. Yet despite the rigid gender roles, the lack of modern freedoms, and the constant specter of warfare, there's something extraordinary about being young in Athens. You're living in a city that's inventing drama, advancing philosophy, perfecting democracy, and creating art that will influence human civilization for thousands of years. You might walk past Socrates asking his penetrating questions in the Agora.
You might watch Sophocles' latest tragedy performed in the theater of Dionysus. You might hear Pericles deliver a speech so powerful it makes grown men weep. Athens is alive with intellectual and artistic energy. So yes, teenage life in classical Athens is demanding, restrictive by modern standards, and separated sharply along gender lines.
But it's also preparing you to participate in something unprecedented. A democracy where citizens debate policy. A culture that values both physical excellence and intellectual achievement. And a city-state that believes human reason and courage can accomplish almost anything. Your youth in Athens is short, intense, and purposeful. Society doesn't wait for you to find yourself. It tells you exactly who you need to become, then gives you the education and training to get there. Whether that's liberation or limitation depends on your perspective. But one thing is certain, ancient Athens shaped its young people with intention, believing that the future of the polis depended entirely on how well they prepared the next generation. And in many ways, they were right.